Hi Val, thanks for
Welcome.
having me on your show.
Can I welcome people to the show first?
Yeah, go on then.
Thank you. I'm really excited that you're eager to be here, obviously, as am I. Because we've never actually had a conversation before. I've heard you on my friend's podcast. We're colleagues. We work together as part of a team, but we've never actually had a conversation. Therefore, I'm very, very excited to have this one-on-one conversation with you, given that we've been part of that team for like a year now, if not more.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I'm just really keen to pick your brain and in a way that awakens the masses out there. That's my intention, the intention of this podcast, to support people's awakening process in the most, awesome way possible. So that's pretty much it. But now I'll let you, just like I said 2 seconds ago, I will let you introduce yourself, and the way that you want people to listen to you on this pod.
Hey, thank you, Val. Yeah, and look, I echo back everything you've just said. I can't believe we've been working together for a year and it's all been very top line formal stuff. And we haven't actually had a proper one-to-one chat ever. And the first time that we do is in a public forum. So look out, listeners. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Michael Dowling-Fleet. I'm the Chief Operations Officer of TrueMind. I'm also a co-founder of Awaken Life Coaching. And we've just launched a course called Awaken Life Foundations One, which I will chat about later on. Who am I? Well, I am a human being who is an educator to his core. And I stumbled into education by accident. And I'll tell you the story quickly, as quick as I can. I started off in merchant banking. See, I was just like a lot of young guys that just thought, I just want to make money, have women, drive fast cars, wear nice suits, right? And I had a very well paid internship at a merchant bank while I was at university. And I could go back and work for them ad hoc, which was better than going and pulling pints at a bar to make your pocket money. And then my second internship, I worked at a stockbroker's. It was a real wolf pit, like Wolf of Wall Street. But I mean, they weren't penny stocks. This was the alternative investment market. It was very legit. Well, as legit as a stockbrokers can be, let's be honest. But I was sitting on the Central Line, the subway in London, and I was just thought, something's wrong. I don't like who, I don't really know myself, let alone like myself. I feel like I'm running on a program. Everyone around me I just can't relate to them. And it was the summer that The Matrix came out in the cinemas. Now, can I just say for anyone listening, that wasn't a precursor to this. It was just synchronized that film came out at the time I was feeling this. And I just thought, and I was getting bullied at work as well. And I just thought, fuck this. There's got to be something else to do. And I walked into a pub back where my mum lives and just asked around and said, look, city boys here, how you doing? I said, yeah, look, it's not working out. Has anyone got any work? And all my mates from back home, they were all builders, they're all tradies. And one of them said, well, we need a lorry driver for the tarmacking firm. Why don't you come down the yard on Monday and meet the boss? So I went down there and I went from wearing pinstripe suit in the City of London to driving a 7.5 ton truck with plant equipment on the back, knocking up muck, getting a suntan, losing weight, having a great time, having lots of laughs. And I thought, yeah, this is more like it.
I love that
Um,
transition. That's really abrupt. That's really like my style of living life. So I'm all over it. Tell me more.
so I had to go back to uni for the last year. And of course, I went in and I thought, you know what? Why did I choose this degree? Is boring as batshit. I did economics and business finance, and I thought, and I don't. How am I going to use this? So I thought to myself, no, I'm probably going to go into construction when I leave. So I graduated anyway, and just completely turned my back on anything financial. At least I thought. So I'll explain what happened in a bit. So I started working and training as a plumber. I worked with a good friend of mine. But the dynamic of working with a friend who was very young, starting out on his own, it didn't work out very well. And I did have an aptitude for the plumbing, but I was living back home at my mum's at the time, and that relationship was very toxic. And so I just felt like I was getting it from all angles. Didn't have a girlfriend. I had nothing to really tie me down. And my escape at the time was just to watch the Discovery Channel. And every time I watched the Discovery Channel, there was Steve Irwin on there, or there was something about Australia. And
Right.
yeah, and obviously my mental health come crashing in about the same time as it does when you have these changes, right?
Hmm.
And my brain was completely scrambled. So, I was dealing a lot with anxiety and depression. And I met a guy at a party on New Year's Eve party of 1999, and he said to me, he said, "Yeah, I struggle too." Um, Probably because he smoked way too much weed. But anyway, he said, "Look, I'm going to go to this Kung Fu class. Do you want to come with me?" And I said, yeah, I've always been interested in the martial arts. So I started training in Wing Chun Kung Fu, and I have a real aptitude for it. And it really was my savior, and it really helped me put things in order. And I thought, what if I can go to Australia and do Kung Fu? So I went searching, and the internet was very primitive back then, and there was an international Wing Chun academy in Sydney. So I could go down there on a student visa and do that. So I
Wow.
did it. And yeah, I sold my car, sold my stereo, any bits that I had, I was 23 at the time. So got the ticket, one-way ticket. I don't think anyone believed I was going to do it. And I just said, bye-bye, England. And it was a lot to miss out on because, I wasn't there for people's weddings or stag do's or christenings or anything. So there was like a lost decade from the people I grew up with that were essentially my family, because I had a very broken home life. So my mates were my family. So it was a big sacrifice, but I was being unconsciously competent, but grossly incompetent at the same time, because I just knew that there was something out there I was searching for, my real self, my real identity. People say, "Oh, you're going to go out there and find yourself." I can't say I did. But what happened is I arrived in Sydney. The Wing Chun school was crap. It was just, a scheme just to get people in on a visa and take their money and, that kind of thing. But I loved Australia, probably just because it was away from my 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 pain body in the UK, and it was sunny, and I like the fact I had a can-do attitude, and also having at the time a name which I've since changed, but being known as Michael Kimoto in Sydney wasn't a big deal. If you put Kimoto on your CV today, then under DEI you'd be top of the list. But back in the day, it was, I don't know about this guy. We'll get some of an anglicised surname when they look for your CVs. But in Australia, that was different. Lots of Japanese people in Australia. They're a Pacific Rim. And, I could access my Japanese culture there quite readily. There was lots of Japanese food, lots of Japanese people. So it was a good fit. The only thing is you can't get a permanent residency running about wearing angry white pajamas. So I was working as a nightclub doorman, and I got chatting to a lady who was head of advisor services for Smith Barney. Well, she realised I had a finance background, and she offered me a position there, a compliance role. So I was back in finance in Pitt Street, Sydney, in the Citigroup Tower, which I referred to as the Eye of Mordor, because I lived in Redfern, and it didn't matter. Wherever you walk through Surrey Hills, you could still see the Citigroup Tower, reminding you had to be back at work on Monday. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I thought, okay, I want to stay here, but I don't want to stay here being sponsored by Citigroup. I want to write my own ticket. So really, permanent residency, what does that look like in the skilled occupation list? Right. Do an Australian qualification in a university, tick, and then do it on a skilled occupation list, tick. Quickest, most economical route, teacher. So graduate diploma in education from Macquarie University. Hi, I'm a teacher. Get your permanent residency. Are you going to teach? Nah. So I wasn't going to teach.
Amazing. That's hang on, like I hate to interrupt you, but at the same time, like I've done that. What you say, I have done that. Except,
Yeah.
I did a PhD, but I went through exactly the same fuckery to stay in this country, and I just received my citizenship 3 days ago, 4 days ago, and it's been 12
Wow.
years or 13 years that I'm here. What
Right.
the fuck? But yeah, yeah, keep going. I'm
Yeah,
just
yeah,
like,
yeah. I
wow.
mean, it's, anyone says that immigration's easy in Australia, it ain't. And so yeah, I had to do a lot of fucking around, and I dare say I worked more hours than my student visa would allow. Um, so that there was, and everyone sort of played that game. But I kept my head down and stayed out of trouble. And so I did like various jobs. I was a sales creator for a real estate company in Newtown. I was business development manager for a leasing company in St. Leonard's. And then it was all just, none of it was doing it for me, right? I was in I call it a relationship. I call it what it was. I got married to some crazy woman who was a solicitor slash accountant, and we moved to the Blue Mountains. And you could remote work as a lawyer. And it was stupid really, because, it was such a long commute to Sydney, but house prices in Sydney were just through the roof. And this was just idyllic. It was like one of the highest points of the Blue Mountains. It was on the edge of the national park. It was a 1 acre block, cedarwood sort of cabin. And I just, thought, yeah. And we bought it. And I thought, right, well, look, this isn't working out. What can I do living out here in the bush, in the Blue Mountains? Well, I'm not a policeman. I'm not a fiery, but I'm a teacher, apparently. I've got a certificate to prove it. So I faxed 14 schools across the Blue Mountains, and one of them came back and said, can you start tomorrow? And I said, yeah, sure. And right, get here at 8 o'clock. I walked in at 8 o'clock. They said, right, there's your register. This is so-and-so. You're going to be teaching ancient history. And I went, yeah, I can do that. I thought, what the fuck? I better start watching some more DVDs. I better start watching Troy and Braveheart. I didn't know shit. And in terms of, it's a bit like if you've got your truck driving license, right? You can do your truck driving test. But if someone comes along and says, right, okay, can you take that rig and drive it up to Queensland on your own? You're going to be in real trouble, right? Because you could probably kill someone. Now, obviously, the stakes weren't that high, but it felt like it to me. And I was in a room with these big burly lads, and I thought, I got to get a handle on this. I don't know how to manage the classroom. I don't know anything, but I just went for it. And I found my way. And about 3 months into it, I thought, you know what? I actually really enjoy working with young people. I feel I've got an aptitude for this. This is something in this. This is what I'm here to do. So I was in a very abusive relationship. It was when my mother came down to visit me. She just sort of snapped me out of it and said, mate, you're not in a marriage, you're in a cult. Can you see what's going on here? And she said, I don't want to leave you here in Australia. You got to come. And this is, bear in mind, she was one of the reasons I came to Australia, was to get away from her. So I went from frying pan to fire, back into frying pan. And she was right. Ultimately, she did me the favor there, and she helped me escape that nightmare scenario. And I moved back to the UK in 2008 and hit the ground running here as a teacher, because I need to earn some bucks, but a radically different education system here. Didn't have the same collegial spirit, the same militancy, the same cohesiveness that the teachers did have in Australia. I don't know what it's like down there now. Australia tends to follow the UK about 7 years behind in these sort of things. But on the flip side of that, Australia is very innovative and leads the way in a lot of other things. So it's like you guys were the first to have contactless, I think, and ATM machines and plastic money and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to education, it tends to be a sort of 5 to 7 year lag. So any teachers in Australia want to know what's going on, I'll tend to look at the UK. And if they go, God, look at all the shit they're going through, watch out, guys, because it's going to come to our shores next. So I spent 80% of my time just doing paperwork. I thought only 20% of my time has an impact on my students' outcomes. And there's got to be a technical solution to change all of this. Now, I've got a story about how I became an EdTech founder. Are you ready for it? This is
Yeah, but
quite
hang
mystical.
on. Wait. Let me just rewind a little, just for myself. It seems to me, right, that like the way that you're walking me through and the listeners through your life, it is very much like it was like made to be, it's like it was written out that way, and it's like you were just following that route. And it's amazing how sometimes we can look back on our life and reflect and be like, wow, that situation really forwarded something else that really, really made me, have an impact on the world or leave a legacy or just like transform something major. And your story, even though it's your life, seems to me very much like that. It's like, I don't know. It just seems like by no means a fairy tale, but it's a very it's like a structured it was meant to be, is what I'm saying. Like as
I
cliche as
100%
that
agree.
sounds.
I 100%
Yes,
agree. And I really feel in my bones I'm going to live till I'm 100.
yeah.
And I'm not the healthiest person. But I believe that because I believe that the lessons in the first 50 years are setting me up for the next 50 years. I'm 48 now, and I'm starting to realize it was all meant to happen. And I'm really grateful it did, as shit as it
Mm,
was. But,
mm,
I was saying this to a group of young footballers yesterday when I gave them a workshop on resilience. And I said, look, you've got the classic spectrum here of failure on one side, success on the other. And people think you start in the middle and you just head that way to success. And I just said, mate, you're going to get hurt. It's the other way around. You start here and you got to go through shit street. You got to go through failure. And a lot of people then get knocked back to the start and they can't take that rejection. They can't step out of that comfort zone and they give up. But you have to keep going back to it and learning and learning and learning and learning. And then you punch through and then you get to the success. And then that's just success in one area. Then there's going to be another thing. But we're always moving forward till the day we die. We're always growing. We're always expanding. We're always lifting our game and we're always giving back and providing service. And that's just, once you come to terms with that, and that's what it's about, then you can, when things do go sideways, you can appreciate the natural law of rhythm and go, yeah, you know what, you got to have night before you have day. So if it's going to be a tough time now, and if it's a really tough time now, there's going to have to be a really good time afterwards. And that's what keeps you there, that faith that keeps you pulling through.
yes, yes, yes. I mean, I've experienced that exact thing that you're saying on multiple occasions and even now, and I'm like, and it's almost like I'm training my brain with each time, right? Neuroplasticity, like each time that it all works out in the end, that strengthens that neural circuit for me. So I can't say that I don't doubt the universe and what's coming, but it's like I'm more I'm more positive about life these days because I don't know, I've gotten out of some shit storms, I tell you, and it's as you say, it's just there's always a silver lining, and I don't know. It just all works out, and I'm grateful for it.
And it's having awareness, isn't it? Not being stuck in your ways, because then what you didn't think was the silver lining, if you have a high level of awareness, you can appreciate, no, actually that wasn't a warning sign from the universe. That was a go sign from the universe. Um, and I heard someone talking about an alcoholic gene, and I just want to bring this in because they were saying, I heard this chat on some Instagram reel, and he was saying that, they study, populations and they reckon there's an alcoholic gene and it's very prevalent in the Irish, it's very prevalent in the Russians. And he said, let me tell you what it is. It doesn't mean these people come out of the womb and say, God, I've got to have a drink. They are built and they are predisposed for crisis management. They thrive in it. So when there's
Mm.
famine, when there's extreme poverty, deprivation, war, they don't lose their shit. But because they're highly tuned like a racing car, they need to be racing all the time. So they need that one of a better word, that drama or that intensity in their life. And if they don't have it, then they'll put the alcohol in, because then that will just sort of keep them on ice until that comes around. But if the shit hits the fan, they're the people that you want on on your team. And I found that interesting. Now I just want to challenge that, because I think, no, I don't think it's necessarily true. I think what happens is, as you and I said, with the neuroplasticity, your neurons all firing together, start wiring together, and you almost get hardwired to seek out the stuff that you think that slightly scares me. So, and I'm quite prepared to go through with that, because I've gone through it before, and it almost becomes a habit. Now, I'm not talking about that from a self-sabotage element of always throwing yourself into the fire and getting yourself into a mess, but more the point of, look, I'm seeking answers, and know that the treasure I seek is more than likely going to be in the cave that I fear to enter. And if you make it a habit of challenging yourself and breaking through that, then I think you become very optimized.
Yes, I mean that's how resilience is built on a neural level, really, really, really. I'm not going to go into the neuroscience of that, but what you said. That's pretty much it. It's amazing. And with the alcohol gene and all that, yeah, I mean genetics plays some role. I always say it's 10% genetics, 90% environment, and it really does depend on what environment you place yourself in. And it's as you say, perspective is everything. I haven't even thought about it like that because obviously I'm Russian, right? So I've got a fair few alcoholics in my family who've died from that, right? Like like my uncle, my grandfather, dead at 58, started smoking at 4 years old, drinking probably at 5 years old, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And and yeah, I mean, I was I think I drank a lot in my 20s through uni. I partied a lot. I lived in Montreal. It's definitely, you know, in that environment, that gene thrived. But
Mm.
but I'm not in that environment anymore. And as I evolve, whereas my soul kind of gets attuned to what it's really doing here, I wouldn't say I don't drink at all. I mean, hey, maybe every now and then, but it's not the same. So in that sense, environment really does play a big part. But I like how you that spin on it that hey, I thrive. I would thrive in those crisis situations. But then yeah, a lot of healing took place as well in the last couple of years for me to step out of living in survival slash crisis mode where I perform very well regardless, But now it's more like I'm exploring who could I be outside of survival and the difference that I can make. And I'm exploring.
Yeah, me too. And there's a paradigm shift from, okay, well, you can survive because you've done all of that. Let's get our head around the thrive and take that toolkit so that we can go and expand the borders of joy and abundance, and take it on as many people with us. You're not going to take everyone, but as many people that are tuned into that with you as you can. And when you can do that, then you are really grateful for what you've learned, even though it was a high ticket price to pay. But if there's that classic stories in there about the man that walked down the street and he falls into a hole, and everyone's standing above the hole and telling him how to get out, and none of it's making sense. And then another chap comes along and just jumps in the hole next to him and says, "Yeah, mate, I've been here. This is it. Just put your foot here, grab that. Yeah, yeah, up you go. See, no problem. Out you go." And then he climbs out himself.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Hmm.
you have to be in that hole to be able to do that for other people.
I know, it's amazing. The value of lived experience, I know it's a small bracket to put on what we actually mean, but I'll just say it that way. It is lived experience, but having experienced for yourself, it makes all the difference. No certificate or degree is worth that these days, and soon to be so. We can't, people with whatever degree. I'm one of those people. Like I have lots of fucking degrees. I have lots of degrees, but none of them really make a difference in what I'm out to accomplish, really, really. And yeah, I can leverage it here or there, But when I work with people, it literally is through what you say. It's through being right there with them. Like, mate, I've been there. Yeah, I've been there. I'm there now, you know? So it's yeah, and it also puts you like it that's what has me be alive. You know, that's what has me be alive versus living life through some theory or hypothetical scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was the thing, that if I'd stayed in banking, it's like I felt I would have my life would have been just one box set of a series that I just would have watched all 12 DVDs back to front again and again and again for 45 years, and not have had the catalogue of experiences that I've had. And you know, I understand that people could be watching and listening to this and say, well, you don't know that, and I don't know that, but I'm grateful for everything that's happened. I mean, even when so I set up an ed tech venture, and I was talking about this with my wife last night at the dinner table, and I said, you know, we were talking about some times when it got really hard. I got into a really messy joint venture, and it was hell. And I got the pictures to prove it. There's a picture of me. God, look, I'm about to have a heart attack. I'm like that, and I'm bags under my eyes, you know, and it was real. I was just running off whiskey and cigarettes at that time because it was just max stress. I was on the verge of losing everything, and it was kind of, I felt like I was going to lose my identity. And, you know, it was that moment in 2017, 18, that I then went up another level and started looking at the more esoteric stuff and
Mm,
looking at the real nature of reality, and looking into the realms of magic and self-transformation. And, you know, had I not gone through that experience, I could have just bypassed it and just stayed in the material realm. And that forced me to do that. And I said to Lucy last night, Lucy said, you know what? She said, you know, I always used to think, if only he didn't sign that contract, or if only he went with that partner instead, you know. But she said, it was meant to happen, wasn't it? And I said, it was meant to happen, because boy, did I learn a lot. I learned stuff you'd never learn that shit at Harvard Business School. You just wouldn't. And I can sit in the room now with senior executives and I can see the whites of my eyes. I'm telling you, buddy, that's not going to work. This is why. And this is what you got to watch out for. And I don't need to have MBA at the end of my name or anything like that. Now, they might not accept it. That's their problem. But I know my onions, because once you've been there and you've done it, you know, it's like you can play Call of Duty and talk about war, or you can be a Vietnam vet. You know, who are you going to listen to?
yeah, literally, literally. So then, okay, now let's jump back to the tech venture. But you've
Hmm.
already brought esoteric stuff, so I'm now into that too. So where do you want to go from here?
Well, let me tell you the story about how that started. So I was really disillusioned and pissed off with teaching. I had been very successful supplementing my income as a tutor, and I was in high demand, but that's emotionally quite draining. And in fact, it's not scalable, because it's you. You have to be this location, this location, this location. This was 2013. So, you know, people expected you to sit with their kids and work through their maths problems at the kitchen table, not do it online. Now, we took a staycation holiday here in the UK. We went down to Glastonbury of all places, and I'd never been before. And we were out walking with our dog. We had a Rottweiler that was a puppy at the time. So we were still sort of training him, and we were walking. And my wife says, look, there's £15 on the floor. Quick, pick it up. I picked up a £10 note and a £5 note. I'm usually the guy that loses the money, not finds it, right? So I was like, oh, wow, she goes, put it in your pocket. Oh, this is turned out to be a good day, isn't it? And then we walked down this side street, and there was a board outside, and it said, tarot reading, 30 quid. And my wife said, oh, go and get your tarot done. And I went, I'm not doing that shit. I did that in the Rocks in Sydney, and they told me I'd be a billionaire and retired by now. It never panned out. You know, can't be asked for that. So she said, no, go in there. So I went in there, and there was a guy that looked like Ozzy Osbourne. And he came out and he said, well, you know, what can I do for you, man? And I said, I'd like a tarot reading. He said, we're really busy at the moment, so can you come back in like 40 minutes? And there was no one in this shop. So I was like, this is strange. Okay. we'll go and have a walk up the Abbey. We'll see you in 40 minutes. Took the dog up the Abbey, came back down. Anyway, sat down, had the reading. And he says, God, your job's a nightmare. You need to get out of this job. It's too much administration. You got into it for the right reason. It's your calling, but not in this framework. And I didn't tell him diddly squat. So I'm like, go on. And then he says, I don't think you'll be in that job past Halloween. So Halloween's going to be a real turning point for you. And he said, you're not gonna screw things up. Everything's going to be beautiful. Oh, the house you're in that you don't think you're ever going to finish, you're going to have that renovated. You'll have your first child there and your second child after you sell it. Then you're going to have a lovely house and a great life and lots of travel and material abundance and all of this stuff. And I was like, oh, well, here we go. And then he crossed his arms and went, yeah, so off you go. Good luck. And I was like, that's only half an hour. And he said, just make it 15 quid. Because it was £30 for the hour and he did. And I just found the £15. Now, later on, I saw a spiritual medium a couple of years later, and my nan came through and she said, did you get my message? I'm glad you found the 15 quid.
Don't you love that?
Because what it was is I did not feel worthy enough or had the power or inclination to go and set up a business. I couldn't even manage a WordPress website. And within 10 months of seeing that guy, this is how powerful the mind is. Once I'd got a vision of it and got emotionally involved with it, that in 10 months later, I had raised £180,000 and I built a platform that ultimately had 150,000 users on it and was leading a tech team and going down to London, having meetings and stuff like that. I mean, I've had such bad imposter syndrome, I couldn't even write an email when I began. And that's not to say I didn't have massive imposter syndrome for years after, because I think when you take on investment, you're accountable for that. And you feel like you're busy for the sake of being busy.
Hang on. Pause for a sec. Your audio is getting fucked up. Can you repeat what you said in the last 10, 15 seconds?
So I was saying about imposter syndrome, and I said,
yeah, I got that part, and then the rest now.
Right. So yeah, when you take on investors' money, you need to deliver tangible results. And you've got this moniker that you're a tech entrepreneur, and I know that there were a lot of people in teaching, quite fear-driven, jealous, bitter types that were sort of sniping and watching in the background to sort of say, he'll probably fuck this up. He'll be back here. Who does he think he is, coming up with this wild idea? So, for me, for my ego, the stakes were high. And that's taught me the destructive nature of the ego, because the ego is telling you to do something 1 minute and then saying, what the fuck you do that for the next minute? It just won't shut up. And so, yeah, there was this deep feeling of not feeling worthy that was coming out. So there was a lot of pain body and a lot of shadow work that had to be done that business had forced me to do. So, I'm really grateful for the experience. And, I hate to say it, but I'm really glad that it failed, because it just taught me so much about myself that's enabled me to go on and do it so much better next time. And failure is part of the process. It really is. And you hear that and you think, well, that's really fucking easy to say, mate, until you can't pay your mortgage. But I've been through all of that, anyone listening. I've been through all of that. I've been in I pride myself on my integrity. I've been in situations where I couldn't make that payment, or I couldn't do this or do what I said I was going to do. And it's hurt me more than it's hurt the other party. But you've got to go through that and you learn from it. Most people could be crushed by it. I mean, I'll say most people, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm anything special, but if you can come out the other side of it and take the lessons and the learnings, again, I say there's no formal education or course or certificate that can give that to you. It just can't. And your value goes up because people will pay you to not have to go through that. to try and circumnavigate that. And if they don't want to pay your fee, well then don't worry about it. But you know what you're
Pretty
paying for,
much.
it's paying for, I'm the one that had to go through hell and learn all of it so you didn't have to learn all, you know. So
That's right. That's
hence the
right.
value.
That's right. That's amazing. I just feel so recreated in what you're saying, although my experience is different, but just yeah, I, I'm I've been there, mate. I'm there. You know, because I left academia in 2021, and I still have people and colleagues and PhD supervisors literally watching this shit, being like, "Wow, this bitch's crazy." Like, you know what I mean? I'm okay with that. Like, I'm so okay with that, and I'm not going back to the fucking lab ever again. I'm just not. I'm just not.
Well, I see when I wrapped my business up, what I did is ultimately I sold the client base onto a competitor. We didn't make any money out of it, but I just wanted a clean exit because I didn't want to screw over the schools and the kids that were using our platform because they were getting their messages and their homework and everything on it. So, that was all tied off nicely. And big thing I'm never going back. I ain't never going back. I'm never going back to the classroom. So much so that I went out and I delivered parcels. I delivered Amazon parcels as a FedEx driver for a couple of weeks because I was like, fuck that. I'm not going, I'd rather do this. But you know, I've got mouths to feed and I just thought, come on, mate, what you're doing, you're working long hours and you can walk into a classroom and make a lot more. So I swallowed my pride and I went back to the classroom and I went back to work for an academy chain that I had previously left. So when all the teachers came together from all the surrounding schools for an inset training day, one of them came up to me, it's an Eastern European lady, and she said, "Oh my God, you're back." I said, yeah. Just for now, till, the next business, another business. And, and I just thought, have a laugh at me. Do what you got to do. But they couldn't understand why was I not fear motivated like them? I got a bollocking for leaving the site 10 minutes early. And I was pulled into a formal meeting and my line manager said, "Where were you last Wednesday, lesson 6? And I just said, "You know where I was. I'd done all my marking. I had nothing left to teach. It was the end of the day. So I headed out the door at 10 to 4. Well, that's just unacceptable. I said, "Look, by the time I got my coat, went to the toilet, dropped off some photocopy and punched out, I had a 4-minute advantage, which quite frankly, I was stuck behind all the mums in the car park. I didn't get away any sooner than anyone else ultimately. That's not the point. You don't just, who do you know? It was this kind of, and she was just looking at me, trying to get her eyes out of me. And I was just sitting there going, okay. And it became very apparent to them. They were frustrated because I am a good teacher. I was very popular with the students. But I'm also ungovernable in that regard. And I don't say that in a reckless way because I am highly accountable. But I know what matters. And I was not going to go into this bullshit of 80% fluff that only has 20% impact on my kids. I want to invert that Pareto efficiency ratio the other way. And that's what I'm all about. So when the opportunity came to write a book and to publish a Awaken Life Foundations course, and I was invited because of my tech experience and background as a CEO, be the Chief Operations Officer for TrueMind. I handed in my notice and I left. And there was only 1 or 2 people that wished me luck. The others were like in a WhatsApp chat group, nothing. Like, yeah, all right, fuck. Kind of
Yeah.
like that. And I thought, oh my God, and these are the people that are cultivating our young minds. And not only that, but their hidden curriculum. When we've always had one in schools, but I'm telling you, Val, it's on steroids now. I mean,
Hey.
making the kids stand up for the Ukrainian national anthem. And I'm like, why are you doing that? Oh, because Putin's a madman. He's modern day Hitler. I'm like, just, well, hang on a minute. I said, that's not the full
Wow.
story. I said, and, we're very early days in this conflict, and you're already picking a side and building a narrative around this.
That's
And,
insane. Yeah.
and then we had the woke agenda coming in as well. And I was like, look, I've got, if you want to play the diversity card, I'm half Japanese. I've got a black sister who's bisexual. We lived in Brixton. We were doing gay pride when it was one day of the year back in the 90s. And we'd walk down a Clapham Common behind a pink tank and get absolutely off our nut. And it was great. And it was cool because it was fringe. And I said, now it's this mainstream monster that goes for a month and it's really, really downplayed. Plus you put in, you put in the TQ part and all of the fetishist part that go with it. Nobody actually consulted gays and lesbians that have worked so hard to get on an equal footing all these years. Do you want to be bundled with these guys as well? Well, actually, no, because they have a completely different lifestyle to us. So when you just completely undermine us and also undermine women's rights all in one go. So well done. And yet this stuff is being pumped in the classroom, PSHE lessons, into assemblies, the climate change narrative about how we should start eating insects, how we should, go for net zero. All of this stuff is just, everyone should be vaccinated. It's just pumping in all the time. And I'm just like, this is horrific. And what the crazy thing is when I actually looked and found who was in charge of this within the school, it was often the humanities department. So the same people that are teaching history, telling kids that you've got to question the provenance of sources. Is it a primary source or secondary source? Or why is Stalin depicted in this way? Why did Hitler do it this way? Look, read between the lines, and yet they were the ones that were weaponizing that same propaganda
Mm, mm,
onto kids. And I just,
mm.
man,
Well, it's an interesting, that's for sure. It's a very interesting educational system. I mean, I teach at university here and I teach first year, medically inclined anyone. So that's your midwives, nurses, paramedics, all that. But it's like hardcore anatomy and physiology. There's not really there's just like there's the hardcore facts. This is a fucking heart. This is how it works, right? So there's not the space to go and talk about anything else in that class. But in the staff room, sometimes I'm like you, students love me, but dude, some of the staff members, I'm like, I can't believe the shit that's coming out of their mouth. Like, I either say something or I leave because it's pure insanity. I'm like, dude, you're fucking traumatized. You need to stop working and take care of your well-being because you're now traumatizing these fucking children who they are. I mean, they're in their early 20s, but bottom line, like, I'm beside myself. So. I guess going back to I'm never going back to the lab. Yeah, that may be a bit of a harsh statement, but I'm never going to to work in that same way or in that same I don't know. I don't know. It's just
I
not
understand.
appealing. It just goes
Yeah.
against the grain of who I am and I don't know. It's just I can't see myself there.
No, no. Well, look, you're like me. When we do something, we give a shit. We put our heart and soul in it. And when you realize that, it's like an unfaithful marriage and you're only in it for the kids. And then you think to yourself, I'm giving everything here and the other person's just been a real infidel. So then you just look at it as a job. And we're not about just a job. So then it becomes really just a temporary engagement where it's just, mate, this is just a little hustle, a little bridge. That's all it is. And I did really look at it and thought, well, oh, look, you've learned a lot about yourself. You might find that you're going to stick here and teach now. No, it wasn't the case at all. Love the teaching, hate the curriculum, hate the politics, don't like the people that, and that's not the judge. I mean, you do you, but, when Trump got elected, there were people literally wearing black, and talking about, oh, the world's over now because Trump's been, and I'm like, where are you getting this from? And, they're looking at me because I remember being in the staff and they're like, oh God, look, is that pork you're eating? And I'm like, yeah. So I have a high protein diet. I go to the gym a lot. And I'm looking around and they're like, oh, well, we're all going running tonight. Yeah, running's really good for you. And I looked around, all overweight and all vegan. And it's all, you know, I open the fridge door and there's like, so I drink raw milk, so I bring my own milk in. And it was all oat milk and soy milk and everything else. And there was always cakes and sweets out in the staff room. Oh, yummy cakes. And they come in, I need more caffeine. For caffeine, cakes. And oh, wait, is it vegan? Yes, it's, oh, no, no. I'm just like,
You remind me of the lab rats. Not you, but like the what you're describing. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And the other thing as well is I witnessed sort of what's happened because it had been sort of a 10-year gap since I'd left the classroom nearly. And we'd had lockdown and I could just see the change in the kids. And the resilience has just dropped off massively. Now, as you know, I work with football clubs, and in football, you know, I got coaches saying to me, mate, what's going on? Because it's like we're seeing every cohort of scholars that's coming in, and it's like they're still in nappies. And I said, yeah, it's, I think lockdown had a massive thing to do with that. I think just,
Absolutely.
you know,
Absolutely.
yeah, and I think the
You know,
social media, but also
I
the
can back
curriculum.
that. Like my PhD was all on social interaction behavior, and if you place social animals, you know, humans included, into their separate respective cages and not socially house them, you will see an increase in things like anxiety, fear-related behavior, all of that kind of stuff. I mean, this is just research, basic neuroscience research 101 that yeah, and that ultimately that's what happened. So I'm not surprised that all of that shit, and then vaccinated people are fucked too now, and it's just like, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, oh, don't get me started on that. I mean, you know, I've lost some dear friends that I'm convinced would still be here had they not taken some experimental gene editing therapy. Um, but also looking at the kids that, you know, they're told stay away from cholesterol, um, you know, stay away from animal sources of protein, stay away from sugar. And I'm thinking, so these kids are just pumped full of aspartame and phenylalanine. And what is that effect is that having on their endocrine system? And I'm seeing boys physically become more effeminate. And not only that, I mean, I was a fat kid and there was only like a couple of other fat kids in the school. It was rare. Now it's like, it's rare to have a slim kid or a healthy kid in the school. And I have to stand on a corridor and make sure everyone's behaving themselves going up the stairs. And when you've got 13-year-olds having to stop for a breather halfway up the staircase, you know, on a population level, what is going on here? And it'd be really hot in the classroom, and I'd say, "Oh, sir, can you open a window?" And I'm like, "Well, if you're hot, take your blazer off." No, 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 no. And I kept thinking, why don't I want to take their blazer off? And what it is a body shame because they're out of shape, and the blazer covers everything, and they're very self-conscious. They're teenagers, right? So, and that was so widespread, and it makes you just realize, man, these kids are fucked. Emotionally,
Yeah.
spiritually, physically, you know, and then we're telling them this bullshit that all they got to do is get a level 6 in maths and the rest of their life's going to be fucking hunky dory. No. And I had some sixth formers say to me, oh, maybe I won't go to university. And I said, go on. Well, I'm thinking maybe I should, there's another, I said, yeah, you should explore those options. Because I said all I got out of university, and I was encouraging people to go to university, but I'm just saying for what it is. You're going to be a chemical engineering graduate working at McDonald's with a shit ton of student debt hanging over you. But you probably, what I got out of university, I got fuck all from my degree. What I got out of it was socialization and escape from home and learning to live with other people and learning how to manage my own finances, or probably mismanage was more accurate in my student days. But that's what I got out of university. that life experience, because we don't have a rite of passage between adulthood, between childhood and adulthood in Western culture. And with people now leaving home because of the economic climate, they're not leaving home till their 30s, then that line between being a child and being an adult is becoming ever more blurred. There is no, it's like in Papua New Guinea, you got to go and get your skin pocked so you look like a crocodile and do a bungee jump off some reeds or something like that. There is something there to show that, you can handle it. You can handle being a responsible tribal member. We don't have anything like that, any such ritual in the West.
It's so true, and I'm experiencing that with the people around me, and wow, I had never thought about it that way. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. But hey, it's fucked.
Well, let's lighten
Yeah.
it up. I mean, humor's what makes us human. That's what, and laughing about it and bringing it out into the light makes a big difference. And being aware of that in our own parenting and parenting ourselves, because there's a lot of gaps that we've got to go and fill in ourselves, right? And there are more of us, we are legion, and there's more of us seeing it this way. Some people might not be able to articulate it, but the more they listen to shows like this and other shows and stuff, they can start connecting the dots and forming their own narrative. They'll have the authority to author their own view of the world rather than following the base program that's been put into all of us. And I think if we do that, then we will end up with, who knows, could be a two-tier society. Now that sounds quite nefarious, but it could just be that, people go, okay, well, you can live in a city with the Soma. I'm quite happy being out here in the countryside with the savages.
Hey, who knows? I'm all about awakening the masses. Like if you're sitting in the cubicle or you're on the subway and you're like, fuck, something's really off here. Okay, great. You should talk to me. You should talk to Michael. You should talk to us. We're people like us and all there for it from all sorts of angles, whether it's educational, neuroscience, fucking numerology, you name it. I'm all for it. But it's only if you want to come along. I'm not here to drag people along that are unwilling. Just I'm not fuck. I'm like, no, I'm not
Now,
doing
I
that.
always think of like that film about the Titanic, and you can tell people, look, this thing's sinking. We know there's not enough life for us, so we're going to make a move now. You're not going to convince the people that just say, well, no, I'm still getting dressed for dinner. And that's pretty much what how it works. And yeah, you don't want to swap one dogma for another. And I think at the moment where people are looking for answers, you've got a lot of Jimmy Jones types out there. You've got these narcissistic new age gurus that are out there at the moment, and they're going to flood in because they just fucking prey on vulnerability, right? And they exploit people. And before you know it, you've got one cult being replaced by another cult. And I'm not, everything that I do is all about empowering the individual to reveal their higher selves. It's all about their self-authority. As humans, despite we're told that we're born in original sin and all that shit, we are innately good. And we will, if we can access our true higher selves, we're pretty good at fucking getting organized, right? We are. We're told that we're not. And you could argue that most people think life happens to them rather than for them, but that's only because that's all they've been taught. And it'll be interesting to see how things evolve moving forward.
There, I'm curious. I'm curious and I'm positive as, however that sounds, I don't give a shit. I'm curious and I'm staying positive. I have faith.
It's so important. It's
All
a
right.
word that I keep coming back to because it's, they say lack of evidence isn't evidence of lack. I mean, there's going to be times when you just think, man, is all this hard work paying off, or am I really barking up the right tree here? And, there's going to be times, especially in business or career change or whatever it might be, where all of the sort of 3D matter, the bills that come in, the rejections, the knockbacks, the setbacks, that will tell you that's evidence that you're doing something wrong. But it's the faith that will keep you going through it until you cross the Rubicon and get to the dry bank on the other side.
Say the last 5 seconds again.
Oh no. So I said, so, you'll have all of these setbacks and there'll be evidence of it. It could be the bill, the letter of rejection, the declined offer. And all of that evidence could convince you that you're on the wrong path. But if you have faith, faith is going to be the drag line that will pull you across the Rubicon to the dry bank on the other side. And that's why
So
faith really is.
beautiful. Yeah. No, I love that. I'm glad I had you say it again. Thank you so much, Michael. Let's wrap it up. I'll have you on again if you want to come back, because I can just keep talking for another 50 hours about
Absolutely. I
various
loved it.
things. Yeah, but where can people connect with you? I know Ben was just on the podcast a couple episodes ago, and we spoke about the course that you guys are offering, like all of that. Where can that be found? Where can you be found?
Yeah. So, please come and visit our website. It's awakenedcoaching.life. Awakenedcoaching.life. And you can contact Ben and I through the website.
Perfect. I'll pop all that in the notes. Well, Michael, thanks. It's been my absolute pleasure, and yeah, I love this energetic exchange, and I hope our listeners do too. And I can't wait to have you back again.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it, Val. And this is, for everyone listening, this is the first time Val and I have had a one-to-one conversation. It really is. Maybe we'll keep it this way. Let's not talk again until I'm back on the show. Yeah.